Well, hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Saint Godric, and you are watching The Archive, where our goal is to preserve LARP history and tell interesting LARP stories. Very excited to introduce you to Duke Master Lukas IV, Defender of the Desert Winds. How you doing this evening?
Doing well. Yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. I am excited to have you on. You were just showing me some of the pictures of some of your work, and I'm super interested to get into some of that with you. But before we get to all of the fun ANS stuff that I love so much, we gotta kind of cue it up a little bit. So for me and those who don't know you, Lukas, give me like an overview of your LARP and LARP adjacent hobbies, careers. When did you get into them? How'd you get into them? Give me some of the rundown of how you got into all this nerdy stuff.
Okay, so starting everything off, I'm in college, like just entered college, probably 18 or 19. And I didn't really know what exactly I was doing in school, but I did notice that there was a club, and it was called the Anime Club, of all things, of course. And that's kind of how I got into everything, because the first event that they pushed me to go to was Youmacon in Michigan. And I really enjoyed it. I started doing cosplay. I made my own costumes. And then it eventually drew me to Shooticon, which was in Lansing, Michigan, instead of the Detroit event. And they had a fight arena. The fighting arena was essentially like a cross between Belgarf and Amtgard rules, except a little bit more slow paced. There was Boffer. They were all foam weapons, and they had like a 1-on-1 tournament style game. And I met a dude named Andrew, who was in Amtgard. His brother's more active now, but just the relationship that I built off of that eventually drew me into going to one of the events in one of the park days, not really events, because I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. He was introducing me to the game, but I really enjoyed it. I really took it off. I actually recently found the credits that were put on account for the orc. And my first date was some day in 2014. And that's essentially where it started. It was at Ashen Hills. I think it might have had a different name back then. I forget exactly. But
I don't think so, because Ashen Hills, if it's the Ashen Hills and the Rising Winds, it's one of the oldest parks in the kingdom. So I would guess that it was probably the same park.
It was definitely the same park, because I've revisited the place, I think 3 years ago. Whenever I go to Youmacon or Shooticon, Shooticon's kind of dead now. But whenever I go to a convention in Michigan, I try to go to two different places. I try to go to the Park Day, went to Ashen Hills. I try to go there every year. And then I also go to the park in Ann Arbor, the Necto. And so those are like the two main places I try to visit all the time whenever I go to Michigan, because it just has a lot of memories for me. I actually went to Keep a few years back as well. It's actually the first time that I've seen you in person, whether you remember that or not.
I do not. Tell me about that experience, because I do not remember it at all.
It was very brief.
Okay, I don't feel bad then.
It was very brief. I was having a good time. I was with Mesriff's caravan from Desert Winds, which is where I'm residing, obviously, and I just seen you. I said hi. I think I commented on your videos and said that I really enjoyed them and that they helped me make my first paracord belt. And then I think that was the entire interaction that I had with you for that period of time, just because how you seemed busy at the time and I was trying to get to another place. So it was just very quick.
I love it though. That's one of my favorite things is when people show me the belts that they've made from my videos. I love that. I eat that stuff up. it's really neat for me because when I was learning to do all the belt weaving stuff, there were 2 videos on YouTube that were 15 years old and, super grainy, and it was just very hard to learn all of it. And so when I started making these videos, to now see people from Desert Winds, from Neverwinter, from these kingdoms that are all across the game come and say, yeah, look, I made this belt using your videos. I freaking love that. That's awesome. So that's funny that you say that, because I don't remember that whatsoever. So
that is absolutely okay. My dog's very distracting me right now.
That's all good, man. Yeah. Keep is one of those events too where you rub elbows with so many different people. For our listeners who maybe haven't been to Keep, it for a long time, and probably still is, the largest event in Amtgard, and generally it's 800 to 1,000 people, and you're seeing people that you haven't seen in a while, or maybe you just know through Facebook, or like what we're saying here, just online interactions, and it's just huge. It's a massive event. It's a ton of fun. No worries. So you said 2014. So if memory serves me, that is V8 the whole time, right?
Yep. Yeah. So was 2014 like a different version at that point in time? I don't remember anything about the rules besides me whacking people.
I am pretty sure that. So I was in college from 2010 to 2014, and in there it switched to V8. I don't remember exactly when. I just remember coming back from college and it was no longer 7-7. Okay. And I had to relearn everything.
So it might have been 7, might not have been. All I remember is smacking people, and we did a really cool ship battle at one point. It was kind of like a mini bridge, except we were inside of ships made out of PVC and tarps. It was pretty good.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But after that, essentially, I entirely forgot about Amtgard because I was doing other things with my life. I really wanted to go, but it was also a hour drive, and I was working paycheck to paycheck at the time, where I was just working retail, and then I eventually went into the restaurant service, which was not really giving me the availability to actually go to park on the day that they had their park days. So I just didn't go until after I joined the military, and I got stationed here in Hill, which is Utah. And like the first thing I did, like before I even got to the base, right out of basic, I looked for the closest park. And I actually got somebody who had base access to pick me up and take me to my first park day in Amtgard, which was actually at River's End in Salt Lake City. And almost immediately, the people from Whimsydale picked me up because that was a little bit closer and it had a little bit more availability. But it's ever since I got here in 2017, I've been nonstop playing Amtgard. And it's just dove into a large pool of community. I've lots of friends. I've met so many new people. I've talked to so many people. I've taken so much inspiration just from everything that I've made. Like I used to craft every now and again before I started Amtgard, but now I just nonstop, don't think, just do crafting. And it's great. I really enjoy it. Yeah.
It's funny what you mentioned about the going to Amtgard first. About 4 years ago, we moved states and for my career, and I'm a spreadsheet type of guy, and so I had all of the options where I could go. What were the things I liked? What was the size? The community, yada yada yada. And 2 of the things on my spreadsheet were distance to the nearest Amtgard park and distance to the nearest SCA group. And so I'm totally that same way. That wasn't it wasn't a major factor, but it was definitely a factor when I was looking at where I wanted to move.
When I retire, that'll probably be the same factor of I'm going to be looking for a 20 to 30 acre property with a barn, a separate building from the main house. That way I can do all my crafting without messing up the house, because I definitely mess up the house when I craft.
Yep.
But the plan is to have a place where I can hold a potentially permanent structures for events. That is like the long term goal. We'll see if that actually happens. But that is one of the goals that I have for
That's
actual,
awesome. What is the biggest or the most amount of damage you've done to your home while crafting?
Well, the guest room used to be a crafting space. And I just recently found a 4x4 space on the floor that I can actually see the carpet. I've been trying to get actual organization going on in that room, but it has not been successful. I bought more organizational shelves, drawers, cabinets, and like even a couple places to actually put my sewing thread on. And it's just like hasn't really worked. It hasn't helped. I'm pretty sure I have 7 sides of leather in my closet right now, just waiting to be used. And that's not including the 2 tubs of just scrap leather.
I love it. I remember for me, it was I had been playing for maybe a year, 6 months, something like that. And the thing that actually got me into ANS at all was I saw someone raided our park and they had 2 or 3 plastidip shields, and I was hooked. I was sold. I was like, I got to learn to make these, So he sent me some of Fitz's tutorials, and I went and I did all the research. I'm one of those people too who I'll do 10 hours of research before I even start a project. And so I went, I got the foam, I got the DAP, I got everything. And I remember I made this shield on the countertop of my parents' kitchen, not thinking anything about it. And I got DAP everywhere. And we had to replace the countertop. I had to replace the countertop. And since then, I was like, all right, always put cardboard down before you do anything with plastidip.
Yeah. I have actually probably like a 8-inch diameter spill of DAP in my garage. That's just kind of sitting there waiting for me to take it out. I'll probably take it out when I move out. So
when you have to.
Yeah, just leaving it there and forgetting about it. I've had a lot of messes with DAP. One of the years that I was at Shitacon and doing my cosplay stuff, I had to do some repair work on one of my cosplays, and it was DAP. And I was in the hotel, and I spilled it in the bathroom, and I'm pretty sure I almost fainted from it because it was in closed space with not much of a fan going on, and I was trying to not entirely destroy everybody else that was in the hotel room, which didn't necessarily work because everybody could probably smell it on that floor. It was awful.
And DAP's potent, man. Yeah. Like for those who haven't used it, it's essentially it's a contact cement that you use for countertops, if I remember correctly. And the stuff is super strong smelling, but it also is, you like put it on stuff and you wait 10 minutes and then you put the 2 sides together, and whatever it is, it's going to stick. Like the stuff is awesome. And you use it, cosplayers use it, plastidip, you use it for making your shields. You can use it just for general shield construction. It's awesome, but it's a pain if you get it on anything. So I wanted to ask you, you said the con is kind of what got you into fighting. How did that first one-on-one fighting tournament go for you?
So the first fighting tournament was actually broken up into 4 different brackets or 4 divisions. It was all single short, shorter than short by Amtgard standards. They were probably about like 28 inches in total length for all the weapons that they had. And it was almost turn-based in a sense. Like you struck, the Reeve called it was a good hit or not, and then the other person struck you. But I took second place in the division that I was doing, which was actually pretty good for almost never fighting ever. And but the main thing was that the first place winners in all the divisions got the fight overall for like the total victory. So I was kind of like winning second place in single short out of the whole entourage of single short, Flower and Team, Sword and everything like that. So it was like I took a good spot, but it wasn't like total overall victory. And
yeah, I get you. That's cool. So do you think it was the fighting part of it that kind of hooked you initially, or was it the crafting or something else entirely?
Definitely the fighting. The fighting definitely got me involved in the game. I could potentially craft in almost every other community that I could join. But like just the nature of the fighting that they had going on with that, and then finding out about Amtgard, and like this is an actual thing that happens every single week, and there's big events of like 3-day events where you have 50 people against another 50 people, and that's pretty insane when you're first getting into it. But like my first event was the Salt Wars of 2017, and I was thrilled. It was great. We had a full-on battlefield. We had people with 10-foot poles for absolutely no reason other than to have a 10-foot pole. You had people throwing arrows around, and then you had just the people who were wearing almost casual clothing with the single short sword and dominating lines. And it was a lot of fun. After like I got into that, I started getting more involved in the crafting. And that was ultimately became my main focus after getting fully into the community.
That's awesome. I remember my first event, I showed up in, basketball shorts and a pillowcase that I had cut a hole in. And I was, people had told me this is going to be a big event, and I show up and I see my first knighting, and I see all of the good garb, and I see the possibilities that our game had, because our park at that point had only been around for 6 months to a year. And so none of us had any good gear. And so showing up and seeing all of that at a kingdom level event it blew my mind, but then it also set the hook. It's like, okay. And then from then on out, I've always had the goal, I want to be the best looking person at any field that I'm at. And it's a constant, like I always try and achieve that, because I remember being in awe at my first event by the good garb. And so my goal, especially now as a knight, is to be that awe-inspiring character for that new player at their first event.
Yeah. No, yeah. I feel the same exact way with that. I'm also involved in the SCA. I'm also involved in a game called Refuge. And Refuge, I am the monster person. I only fight as a monster because I don't want to worry about my own character dying, or I am the monster person in Refuge. I am the one that wants to have the best monster garb, to the point where someone actually told me she was actually scared for her player character's life because of how terrifying I looked. I was a level 2 goblin, but I looked scary enough to actually have that devastating effect on there. So when I'm playing a monster in a Refuge, my goal is to have the best costume. I'm always pestering the plot team to tell me what we're going to be playing as, so that way I can actually prepare, make a full out costume. I'm actually making 2 sets of leather armor right now for an event that's happening in 2 weeks, just so that way I have that look, because I just want to look really good. The outfit that I'm wearing now was actually made for Amtgard, just to look really good. I am definitely side by side with the stance of just looking as good as possible, so that way people can go wow, you can always take your costume or your garb to the next level and still have it field capable, even for both the field fighting in it, or you could also take it to the next level with just court garb and looking really good in that fashion as well. Yeah,
that's one of the things I always try to stress with my garb is I think I only have 1 or 2 pieces that I would call court garb, and they're accessories. I have a specific pair of boots that I'll wear for court or whatever. But most of my garb, I try and make it the best on the field, the best looking on the field. But then if I walk into court with it, it still looks good. Yep. And I think sometimes in Amtgard in particular, you get court garb that is people go above and beyond, and it ends up being more, I don't want to call it costumey, but not practical. You couldn't go and fight in it. And that's one of the things I really enjoy about SCA garb. They have some of that, obviously, but some of the pictures that I see of the people, they're coming off of the field in garb that I envy. Like they've been fighting for hours in garb that I would love to wear at court type of stuff.
There's the specific genre of garb of Landsknecht. I just want a full outfit of that because you will look good no matter where you are. You could like have mud spilled all over your entire outfit, but you're still going to look good. It's just one of those types of genres of outfits that you can just, you can fight in it, you can eat in it, you can go to court in it. Nah, it's great. And that'd be wonderful to have.
And that's what, like 15th century German or something like that?
Yeah,
I know it's late period for SCA stuff.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's more focused on the 16th century because towards like the peak of the Landsknecht era is like they actually had formations that had muskets. Okay. They might not have been called muskets, but they had firearms. They had gunpowder and metal bullets ready to shoot at people. So it definitely was late period for SCA, but you still find those people that like are really into the Landsknecht look.
It's a cool look. I've seen a couple of people like that. So I want to circle back. What was the other game that you played? You said SCA Amtgard, and what was the third one?
Refuge. Refuge is the very LARPy one.
That's what I was going to ask. So the guys over at the Whack podcast, and viewers, if you haven't seen any of their stuff, you should go check them out. They're another content creator around Amtgard, and they do great stuff. But Flo has a term that he uses. He calls it LARPy LARP. And it's right. And so that game, just from hearing your description of it, I have never played a LARPy LARP. So if, as someone who is completely new to that world, that genre, compare and contrast it for me with Amtgard. What's different? What's the same? What are the selling points? Kind of give me some more info on that.
So the main selling point that I would probably say is that you get to make your own character and you get to be fully immersed in it. Obviously, you can have that in Amtgard, but for the most part, I've noticed Amtgard, your persona is literally you.
99% of the time.
Yeah. Like, for instance, my real name is Luke and my Amtgard name is Lukas. I was not very original with that, but it just kind of like took off with it, and why not? But for Refuge, you make your own persona. You don't have to be a human. There's many other species that they have available to play. And some of them are human looking. Some of them are a little bit more animal-esque, but you can essentially be whatever you want. That is probably the most selling point, the thing that I can say. Also, if you're a little bit less friendly with the more speedy or more impactful combat that Amtgard, Belgarth, or SCA might give you, Refuge is a little bit more light touch. It's not going to hurt as much. It's not going to sting. You're barely going to feel it. The idea is that you're just kind of like stating your damage that you're dealing, and then you're just trying to touch the person that you're attacking. You're not trying to whack them or even like may have a loud pop.
Is it latex weapons or?
They do have latex weapons, and there are some talks with some people that don't understand that latex weapons only have like less than an inch of foam from the core. But yes, they have latex weapons, which is another great thing because you get to have really cool weapons as long as you're able to invest in them. Because the latex weapons look really cool. I've seen very fantastical weapons that people have used. You can have rapiers, sabers, and they look like rapiers and sabers. You can actually use them that way. Another thing that I really enjoy about Refuge is that it is a quote unquote 24/7 game. As soon as they say lay on, you are laying on in your character the entire event, unless they have like some type of hold or they have the lay off. You are in character the entire time. But that really differentiates between like Amtgard, where Amtgard you have a set schedule. Well, I say set, but you have battle games. Amtgard time. But that's every LARP. Every LARP has their own Amtgard time, where you are going to always be a little late on everything. Not everything goes smoothly. You can make a plan as much as you want, but it's never going to go 100% the way you want, which is the great thing about LARP, is that you just get to have as much fun as you can, and everything can be free flowing in its own way.
Well, and it sounds like the in character the whole time is something that a lot of Amtgarders would enjoy and push for, at least from what I've seen in the kingdoms that I have played in. It's there always seems to be this desire for more role play. Because you say like you're in character from the time lay on to the time you step out of your car. For me in Amtgard, for me as someone who is not a massive role player, it's like I'm in character for like 10% of my Amtgard time. And so I think I would really enjoy being in character the entire time, because part of the thing for me with Amtgard that makes it so difficult to get invested in the role play aspect of it is we don't have an overlying backstory to get to feel invested in. And a lot of the Larps that I have read about and I have seen videos on have factions, have worlds, have deities, have all of these things that in Dungeons and Dragons make the role playing really fun, where in Amtgard we don't really have, because we have to make it the world has to be accessible to the half dragon, half orc, yada yada, whatever, and the 14th century Norman. You know what I mean? And so because Amtgard doesn't have that overarching lore set, I think for me at least, that's the biggest reason why it's hard to get into character and to role play sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. Amtgard could definitely use some more events that allow full immersion. I know that Desert Winds has had an event, I forget what they call it, but it was essentially a 1 day full immersion. From Leon, you go and you do a bunch of quests, and you have like I think it was like a October event, so they were always Halloween themed. But
that's cool.
It was LARPy, but Amtgard rules essentially. And it would really be good to have those full events just accessible for every game type that you could potentially have. I know that Whimsydale, the park that I'm part of, we are very monster focused. I'm pretty sure all of the core players have level 6 monster. That's awesome. To the point where like we just all have a bunch of monster guard, and we just like to play monsters a lot. And we are trying to, I'm not the one in charge of it, but a gentleman named Leo Martin, he is the one that's currently in the process of planning an event that will be a depending on what we can actually do, 1 to 3 day event where it's just full immersion. You just do a bunch of quests, and the entire idea is that you're role playing as the character that you are.
That's awesome.
It's a great feeling. I am an individual that prefers to smack in those types of situations. I don't like worrying about my player character dying, so I don't have to worry about that if I am the goblin trying to murder the people that have to worry about that. It's a little bit more fun for me because I enjoy acting super goofy. I enjoy acting like the level 1 goblin that has no idea how to actually hit you, and if I do hit you, I celebrate for joy. And it also really nice because the newer players in Refuge specifically, like some of them are a little bit scared to actually hit you. And there was the last event that I went to was a weekend ago or 2 weekends ago. And I was playing an undead zombie, and I did not swing once at the new players. I just kind of growled and swayed back and forth and made exaggerated movements and big steps. And they acted very scared of my form, even though I wasn't like aggressing them too much. And when they actually killed me, everybody cheered them on. Everybody celebrated their victory, and it put a real smile on their face. And that's probably like one of the best parts of just being an NPC. You get to be just a person for people to hit, so that way they kind of get that experience going, and you get to be part of the story.
For sure. And that's something they're going to remember for years when they're telling their friends, trying to recruit them to the game. The NPC moments are going to be some of the things that they remember the most, that stand out the most. Have you looked into or read the rule book for Empire LARP over in the UK at all?
I have watched videos. I'm pretty sure it's the same LARP that I'm thinking about, that you're talking about. I have watched videos. Oh my gosh, I would love to.
It looks
play.
so cool. So viewers, if you haven't, go look it up. They have a wiki that is awesome. They have an online character builder, and it makes your character sheet. But the thing that I like the most, so they have, I want to say a dozen, I could be wrong on the number, but factions. And the way that they describe these factions are, it's like in Avatar: The Last Airbender, when they're in bossing Say, you can tell you're in bossing Say because of the garb that the background characters are wearing. And so each of their 12 factions are very different, and they allow some play in there, so you can still be your character in there. But when you look at this faction based on what they're wearing, you can tell, oh, that's the Iron Guard or whatever, or and each one has a very specific flavor to them. And when your character dies, your next character doesn't have to be a part of the same faction. So it can be, but it doesn't have to be. And that's something that I would love in Amtgard. Something that is broad, like 12. Everybody can find something they enjoy in 12 different factions, but it would give an overarching where if I'm playing in Desert Winds, I know my character is going to be dressed and look like Iron Guard or whatever it is. And I can go find Iron Guard camp and be, like, it gives that continuity across all of our kingdoms, which currently we don't have. When you have certain reigns doing superhero reigns, and then right next to it you have a traditional Japanese reign, and like all of that's fun and good, but if you're trying to get into the role play, that's not the best.
Funny thing that you say traditional Japanese, because Desert Winds is currently doing Legend of the Five Rings, the D&D 3rd edition campaign. And like that's actually a good example of like having specific clans, because we have the main clans from that campaign setting as the factions that you would join. And I'm currently the quote unquote leader of the Unicorn clan, because unicorns are great. They're better, and you can't say anything different. I know there's a couple of unicorn haters, and in Amtgard specifically, but you are wrong. But like even then, you have like the specific color codes that you have for each clan. Where the unicorn clan is primarily purple with white and gold as like the secondary alternate colors that you can have for your uniforms. It'd be really nice if we could have that. We do kind of have that with the companies, but the companies can kind of can almost feel exclusive, where you're not really going to be able to fit in unless you like get along with everybody in that. And once you're kind of in that, then you're always in that almost. Well,
and the companies, very few companies are actually nationwide, right? Like Saracens are probably in every kingdom, but other than them, I don't know of any other fighting company that truly is in 80% of the kingdoms in our game. And definitely, I wouldn't, if I were in charge of the rules, I don't know why anyone would ever let me do that, but if I were in charge of the rules, I don't want the companies to be the factions, because I think the companies have different goals, right? Like certain fighting companies are newbie friendly, like if this is your first time, go hang out with this group. And that is a very specific niche that is needed in our communities. But then you have other ones that are hyper competitive, and the goal is to win Bridge Wars or win Keep every year. And those are two very different goals. And I think we need the companies that have the various goals for the different aspirations of the different players. So I would love a 12 faction, whatever, throw arbitrary number out, faction that are across the entire game. But then you have your fighting companies then that can move freely between those. And the factions are more for role play, where the fighting companies are more for your goals in the game, or like ladder award goals, I guess.
I agree. Amtgard could definitely have a more fleshed out world. The only thing that I could see as an issue is that you're going to have so many people like jumping on that ship, and then they're going to have their own ideas and like trying to flood the world at that point. And that's the only issue that I have. But also that could be a really good thing, where you have like a representative from each region or each kingdom just throwing in 1,000 ideas, and then those ideas just become specific to those areas, while you also have the factions in different areas.
We would definitely have to play with it, because I know the Empire Larp, they're not quite a festival LARP, but they're more along that line, as in there is a central one central location where everyone comes to play. It's not like Amtgard where you've got a different, 100 different parks and all over the UK. They have like one or two spots that everyone travels to for those events. So it wouldn't be able to be copied directly over, but I think it would be a cool system, at least for our people to look at and see like, oh, so my character can actually be a part of something larger than themselves and not just whatever, because Amtgard roleplay can be so cringy sometimes. Like I love roleplay in D&D. It's my favorite part. If a D&D game where I don't even roll a dice and we do everything with RP encounter is my favorite type of D&D. I despise RP and Amtgard though, because for whatever reason, the people come up and I don't care what your 14-page backstory is on your half gold dragon, half minotaur, whatever thing, if it doesn't directly involve the game that I'm playing in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I've definitely had some cringy moments, and it's like it's not like the individual's fault. It's it's just kind of like the environment that we have in Amtgard that's not really role play friendly in its own sense. Like even when we're doing our questing. If anyone does hold a quest, it's not really LARPy in its own way. It's like you're all agreeing that you have an objective, and party one might backstab party two, but you're both trying to kill the dragon that's kind of sitting in the corner collecting its hoard. So it's kind of like you don't really get any real LARPy or role play experience, and even like some of the experience that I do get with actual LARP is like everybody has almost the same accent. They kind of like have that almost like piratey-esque slur that they put on their voice, and then they just call that good. Nothing wrong with it, of course, but
or they do the stupid orc, the barbarian. Yeah, that's another pretty common one.
It'd just be good if we could have like more in-depth LARPing involved into the game. And obviously you'd still have all the competitive stuff that you have. It's just give everybody the opportunity to have a little bit more involvement in their character instead of just being, hi, my name's Lukas. I like to play assassin and swing sticks. That's it.
Yep. Well, and I think even as someone who is not super interested in personally doing some of the RP, I feel it is good for the health of the overall game as a whole to give whatever people, it is not up to me to bemoan how other people have fun. Yeah, and exactly. It should be Amtgard's job to be able to be a space where everybody can come and do what they're going to enjoy. For me, I love the competitive fighting company tournaments and I love arts and science tournaments. Both of those should be available, but also should be the guy who doesn't want to be competitive, but wants to go out and bring 1,000 throwies on the field. And that's how he has fun. Go do it. Have fun. Mm-hmm. And the guy who wants to do the role playing, go do that too. Like because ultimately the more people that we have playing our game, the more fun everybody has. And so even if that's not your area of enjoyment, you should still be pushing for it for the people who do enjoy it.
Exactly.
So that's my rant for the day. Viewers, go and do and support the things, even if, how about this? V9 said they did the V9 committee thing during the Gathering of the Crowns, and it was something stupid like 70% of Amtgard said that they wish that we had more roleplay. And so even if you're like rolling your eyes when you hear that, 70% of potential new players at your park are going to enjoy doing roleplay. Mm-hmm. And you want new players because then you get more people on the field. And most of the time it's, the quote stick jocks who are like, I don't like this. This is dumb. Well, the more people you get into role play, the more people you're going to have to fight and hit on the field, and the more fun everybody has.
Yep. And there's different genres of LARPs, but it is still called a LARP for a reason. It's a live action role play. You can do many different things, but the key thing is you're supposed to be having fun. And if people want to have fun by LARPing or role playing another character, then they should have the option to do so. For sure. So hot button, gonna get you in trouble question here. Is the SCA a LARP in your opinion? Yes.
Same. I agree hardcore.
I've had people like tell me that it's not a LARP to my face, and I'm just like back at their face like it's a LARP. You are doing a live action game and you are playing a role. What's your persona's name? Exactly.
Yeah.
You're a role player.
Yeah. Yep.
I also get that with the people at my work too, because we do a lot of exercises in the military, and you are doing a live action role play of your person if you were in a deployed location. You are LARPing. So like you can get into a lot of different like environments of what LARPing actually is, but like it's all the same. You're playing a role in a live action environment, and it should just be available. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Come Try LARP stuff, and they put out a bunch of really good content, but almost on every single one of their comments sections on TikTok are people who are like, oh, you couldn't do that with a real stick, or you get the HEMA guys who come in, or the SEA guys who bemoan this. And I keep thinking to myself, guys, we're all like nerd adjacent here. Mm-hmm. Like you can enjoy what you enjoy, and we can enjoy what we enjoy, and still understand that they're completely different things, but still adjacent things.
Yeah.
And I don't know, these guys who come in, it's like, I play SCA. It is not a LARP. And I'm like, yeah, what's your character name and what's your persona from? And that garb, do you just wear that to work every day? Because if not, you're LARPing. Like, it's like, if that is not you, you are LARPing.
We're gonna get in so much trouble with this.
Yeah, I don't mind.
That's fine.
This won't be the first podcast I've said that on. So it's funny. There was a documentary on the SEA. Oh, what was that called? Off the Cuff did it. It's on Prime. It's like an hour and 15 minutes where they go to Penzik, and they have never done anything like this before. Mm-hmm. It's awesome. And they ask, is this a LARP? To a couple I think they showed 2 or 3 people, and like one of them was like, but the other 2 were like, yeah, like it is. And so I think a surprising amount of SCAers would probably agree with us. They're just not vocal about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've watched that. I've definitely watched that video.
If you go and watch it, if you pause it in their very beginning intro, they're talking about SCA, and they show an Amtgard photo. And it is a picture from my fighting company at Bridge Wars like 10 years ago. And so I paused it, and it's like, oh, here are all my buddies. And they've got all the foam stuff. And it's like this SCA documentary. And then there's Amtgard. I thought it was pretty funny.
That's pretty good. I like that.
So shifting back to Amtgard a little bit now. What you said, the crafting and the fighting were the things that kind of hooked you. Going through your wiki and your orc, I'm seeing a Duke title. I'm seeing a Master Dragon award. What are the things that, how about this? When Amtgard had become something that you had decided you wanted to do, how did you land on those 2 things, or some of the other things that I maybe didn't see as I want to pursue this? Like, that's
a great question, because the original idea was that I was just going to be doing a lot of leather crafting. So like my brain, honestly, with all the communities that I've joined for LARPing, is must do, don't think. Just do everything that I can possibly do, and don't think about it. Just keep doing it. Getting into actual ANS stuff was kind of difficult for me in the beginning. Like I had the fundamental skills. I could do stuff. I've been doing art since I was a little kid, mostly because my mom shoved it down my throat, and I was almost forced to, in a way, because when I was younger, I almost played every single instrument. I don't know how to play any of the instruments anymore because I stopped doing it. And she also put me in all the dancing. She had me in ballet, jazz, tap, everything that you could really think of for like any type of fine arts I was part of. And so I had the fundamental skills, but like getting into Amtgard specifically was now like, you could do whatever you want. You could free flow as much as you want. You can make whatever you want. You can use any type of medium. And the first thing that I remember making, I actually made a gambeson. It was very simple. It was tabard in shape. And I used the quilted fabric from Joann's.
Yep.
And I took these metal studs that I found off of Amazon, and I just kind of made the tabard, and I took these metal studs and I, by hand, put all the studs into the fabric, and I called it a gambeson that I could use. And that was actually the item that gave me my first owl. And it was like, oh, maybe I can actually do this. So like it kind of just leaked from there, where I was just getting really involved in just creating everything and anything as much as possible. And that also included like me going on YouTube and literally watching hours and hours and hours and hours of videos on different techniques on how to do different things. My Pinterest is filled with different references of all the way from monster garb all the way to like inspirational designs on how to do an illuminated scroll. It just has a large amount of research to like figure out how to do different things and from different mediums. And it all kind of trickled from there. Like the hardest thing that I had getting into the actual flow of doing dragon work or serpent work was that entering into A&S was kind of difficult because I wasn't humbled at that point. I wasn't used to people critiquing my work. I was actually used to being told that my work wasn't good enough. It still needed more to be done. So when like I actually got comments back, I was put off by it. I was not enjoying or agreeing with some of the comments that were given. And it's like, it kind of made me take a step back and had to like figure out what was going on. And the solution to that was that somebody actually, after some time, I ran into a gentleman named Mr. Pickles. He is from Mordengaard, I think. I should probably know this because I'm belted to him. He is from the wetlands in Mordengaard. I was correct. And the thing that he told me to do was judge an A&S tournament. And I said, okay, I'll offer to judge and I will use my critical thinking to the best of its ability. And when I did that, it actually helped a lot to actually humble myself about the stuff that I was making and entering and putting forth and to like have people look at. And it really helped. And beyond that, it just kind of like almost snowballed to the point where I was just making so much stuff that I was getting award after award after award after award. And I would say that if you're a new creator making things and you're not sure what to do, when you enter items, don't take the comments in a negative form. Like if you disagree with those comments, you are getting the opinion of an individual that probably has never seen your work before, or maybe has. And you should just take it with the best interest that they are trying to be constructive with their words rather than deteriorating your foundation, essentially.
For sure. I think if you're new to Kingdom tournaments, like higher end Inner Kingdom or Kingdom stuff, something you need to realize is the judges most of the time are doing their best at what they're trying to do. And you might disagree with them, and that's okay. Don't be mad at them for the critique, because that is what you are asking for when you're entering the item. Like you are asking them, how can I get better at this for next time? The only time you should be getting mad at judges is when the judges don't give you comments you can use.
Yeah.
For instance, the first keep that I ever entered in, I entered one single paracord belt, just wanted to see how it would do. I got a 4 out of 5. And my only comment that I got one comment, was this is the best belt, or it was like, this is the most perfect belt I have ever seen. And that was all I got. And I'm like, okay, then why isn't it a 5?
Yeah, exactly.
You know? And so you can be mad at your judges for stuff like that if their comments aren't helpful. But if someone is saying, hey, I would have done this differently, here's how I would do it, and they give you some detailed instructions or some advice, even if you disagree with it, It's still them. They're trying to help you get better. And what I did and what I would recommend people do, next time you enter something with that in your write-up, quote that judge and say, look, here's what I did the first time. Here's what the judge said to do the second time. And then here's what I'm doing now. Because then your next judge, if they tell you you're doing it wrong, are then going against another one of their fellow judges, and they don't like doing that. So there are ways that you can, quote, play the game to get the scores that you want. But you like what you said, you have to be humble about it. If you're coming into it, it's like, I should be getting 10s, and anybody who doesn't get a 10 is just stupid and wrong, then just don't even enter. Like, you're not going to get anything out of that.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with the comments, and I really like that idea of quoting the judge from the previous time. Is showing like they told me I should work on the burnishing of my leather, so I worked on the burnishing of my leather, so that way there's an improvement there. My least favorite comment is "that's nice" or "it looks good." Those are my two least favorite comments that I have ever received or seen people give. And it's like, great, that's not constructive, doesn't help me. And it's just showing that you took the time to write 3 words, thanks, and you gave it a 3.5. Okay.
If I'm the tournament runner and I see one of my judges do that, I am not asking them to come back and judge. I mean, it's just, and I understand there are different things, right? Different tournaments have different purposes. For quals, I don't mind as much, because quals it's to see if you are, involved enough in Amtgard to be able to run for Kingdom Office. I get that. I'm okay with lesser, like not as much comments, not as many comments, I guess, on quals. But if I'm entering best of the best, or if I'm entering keep, or if I'm entering a Kingdom level Dragon Master, I expect as a judge, and then as someone who has run tournaments as well, I expect my judges to be giving good feedback. If something isn't worth a 10 or a 5, depending on whatever system you're using, tell the people how to get there for the next time. And if you can't think of something, then you probably need to bump the score up, right? If it's just like 3.5, why? Well, it's okay. Well, no, how would they get better at it next time? Well, I don't know. Okay, then you probably need to bump that score up a little bit if you can't say what's wrong with it.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. That was probably the biggest hurdle that I had getting back from like entering items into an ANS tournament, to the point where like the first few tournaments that I was entering, like if the first judge that I read gave a poor comment, I just didn't read the rest of them. I was like, I already know what I did wrong. I can be critical enough about my own work where I don't have to like get your opinion on what I did wrong, because I already know this and this and this and this are wrong. But like if I go into the comments and I see like they're constructive and they're actually agreeing with the critiques that I already had, then I know that I'm on the right track of what to improve. Which is something that you should always be doing, is like finding ways to improve anything that you're doing. Like even if it's like writing fictional stories, figure out a way to make the flow work. Learn how to make your grammar a little bit better. Or if you're doing like leatherworking, if you are tooling a rose, for example, and you are like getting a little bit too heavy steps in each tool mark, learn how to make it a little bit smoother so you don't see as many steps when you're moving that tool to the next position on the pedal. Just stuff like that. Like just learn to improve. The quote that I like to go off of the most is actually on my Amp Wiki page, and it is strive to become the strongest version of yourself. It's not just physical, that's also mental. Always strive to become the strongest version of yourself, because you will always be improving if you are keeping that in mind and you are following that kind of doctrine.
Yep, for sure. If you're entering the ANS tournaments as a whole and you're coming at it with, I want the judges to tell me what I need to do to get better, because you're striving for that, 8, 9, 10, and then you ignore what the judges are telling you, you're bound to fail. Like you're bound to fail. Like you have to listen to what they're telling you, because they're the ones that get to decide how well you do. So it makes sense. And I like what you said as someone, if someone is sitting at like 4 or 5 or 6 and they've decided that they want to push into that masterhood level, they're going to go for it. They're going to give it the honest try, and they feel like they've hit a wall, go judge. Like that is one of the best things that you can do, because you will see, it gives you perspective that you didn't have otherwise, and it shows you what the other judges are looking for, so that way when you go back and enter, you get a more clear picture of what they want. And I would highly agree and echo you with that if you're pushing to be a master in any of the Serpent Pass, you need to be judging. You do. It's your kingdom deserves it from you. You need to be serving in that way. And then you need to be able to it'll help you compete better if you do it. So I now try and judge at least one tournament a year and compete in one tournament a year, even though I've already got my masterhood, even though, because I think it's important, A, for me to judge and be in that environment. And then B, it's important for masters to keep entering, because the worst thing I hate is when masters stop entering after they get their masterhood. It kills me. You gotta keep what we were talking about earlier with that inspiration thing. You gotta keep showing people what's possible, and you gotta give someone. You gotta be somebody's like rival, right? You need people to set the bar so that the people coming up after you can jump over the bar. And if like for me, 3-4 of my first tournaments, there were no masters that entered, and like, cool, I won. Cool. You know what I mean? There wasn't anybody. It was like kind of that same thing with the warlords. It's like, oh, cool, I won a tournament, but the best person at the fighting tournament was a 4th level. What does that really get you, type of thing? And so I think it's important for the masters to keep entering.
Yeah, one of the blessings that I kind of had was a few of the tournaments where I had entered scrolls. There's another individual that had also entered a scroll, and they were a master dragon. And I scored, like, for one of the tournaments, they placed best in show with the highest score, and my item was literally 0.02 of a point lower than theirs, which kind of put me like, dang. Yeah. But also, like, they're a master dragon. They've been doing this, and like it was that good. So like it was also a confidence boost. Like I can get there because I am matching or almost matching the score that they got. Which shows that the judges thought they were pretty similar and equal to how they were executed.
Absolutely. I'm gonna switch over here for a second, and we'll go to the full screen. I want to take a look at some of your work here. Let me drop all of my Facebook notifications before I send the audience over there. Sure. So let's go through this stuff first. I think this is just a gorgeous piece, but explain to me, what am I looking at here?
So this is, I wouldn't say won me, but it helped me get overall and best in show of the most recent ANS tournament that I was part of, which also got me my Master Dragon in the overall aspects. But this is a suit of leather armor that should be 3 points of armor. I say should be because I haven't had anybody physically examine it yet for Amtgard standards, but the torso is SEA legal. So if that helps with anything, that kind of gives you an idea that it is 3 points. But I did so much research on Japanese armor and how it is traditionally made, to the point where I even I found a couple templates. I created my own template. I punched every single plate that there is, and I even lacquered the inside of the plates, and I covered the outside with wax. But the easiest way to describe it is that it's just traditional Japanese samurai armor. It is missing some of the pieces that you would expect a full kit that a samurai would wear, specifically the coats. And I forget the actual names because I've been looking at the diagram for a while, but it's missing the legs, it's missing the shins and the elbows and the forearm pieces. But it's the main piece of a traditional Japanese set of armor that you would expect. I still have the plans on making those items, but I have so many projects going on.
Of course. That's awesome. I think we've got a couple. So here it is laid out. What do you think is the weight on the whole set? I've been interested. I've worn metal lamb and I've worn the plastic lamb that everyone in the SCA wears. I've never worn the leather lamb. Where's the weight fall?
So I remember weighing it. I forget the exact weight that it was, but if I remember correctly, it's between 10 and 15 pounds.
For 3 points, that's not bad.
And when you put it all the way on your body and then you put a belt around the waist, like it doesn't feel like much at all. The hip guards, the skirting doesn't really feel like it's there. And it flows really well when you're moving around. I actually took a couple pictures of me kicking in it, showing that it had like full flow of movement and it didn't hinder anything at all. And it like for what it is and for what it protects, it works really well. Yeah,
for sure. I think we've got one more of it. Oh, there it is. Cool. Did you make the hat also, or was it a pre-purchased hat that you decorated?
So it was purchased, but it was actually purchased in Japan and brought over to the United States. So that was like one of the kind of like fitting pieces of the hat.
Sorry, go ahead.
The painting and the the little bells on the rim, I did add those. Yeah. So I did add that for flavor and to like add to the kit.
One of the things that I respect a lot and I wish got awarded more is the idea of combining pre-purchased things into coherent kits. Like for instance, I think we do this more with monster garb, but I have no issue if you make 75% of it, but then you have a cool like accessory here and then maybe your bow. Like I think if you enter all of that, even if it's not necessarily 100% everything you made, I think a coherent kit is very impressive. And the fact that you can take things from other vendors and make it work with what you're making is a skill set in and of its own.
It definitely adds to the show. And actually, in my opinion, it gives me the impression that you care about the piece that you did. Like if you just throw it on the table with the write-up, great, you made the piece, you showed the passion to creating that piece. But if you set out a cloth, you set it up so that way it looks really good, it has a couple items that complements it. It shows that you have the passion and the care for the entry, that it's not just like it's not just that you just created it and you move on to the next piece. It's like you took the time to show it off.
Yeah, 100%. I'm going to drop back here. I love these. The silk banners, so do you have a giant, what is it? The stretch rack for this long of a pennant?
Yep. If you actually go into my albums on that page of banners, you'll actually see where I have the frame set up. Yeah, that's awesome. Right there. Yeah,
that's so cool. I've seen, this is one of the topics that I have watched hours and hours of YouTube videos on and haven't quite gotten around to making yet. For those who don't know what we're looking at here, what goes into a silk banner? Is it paint? Is it like what goes into this whole thing?
So the entire process of silk banner can be intimidating to anyone that's new to any craft. I would highly suggest that you kind of get familiar with other mediums before you try to dive into this. But the entire process is that you are taking a silk scarf of, you can have different type of thicknesses and different type of silks. As long as it's not treated with a specific dye, then you can essentially use it. And the most common silk that I've seen used for silk banners is an 8mm habitai, which you can actually get from dharmatrading.com. and you can purchase off those. But you need a frame because you need to stretch out the silk, which is probably one of the other things that's kind of intimidating because you have to have some type of woodwork. But you could also use PVC pipes. I've seen so many people use PVC pipes and then just rubber bands and those paper clips that are the black ones with kind of look like teeth, I guess. And then you just kind of string up the silk banner, you make it taut, and then you use a resist. A resist can be permanent or it can be semi-permanent or it can be wash off. The type of resist that you're seeing on the actual silk right now is a permanent kind, and it's from Jacquard, and is essentially creating line art on silk. You are taking the design that you're looking for. You are then applying it to the silk, which actually can be quite intimidating as well. The whole thing is intimidating, just saying, because like once you apply that resist onto that silk, it's not coming off. No matter how hard you try, even if it's fresh on the silk, it's not going to leave. This is also the same case for the dye that you're using, but we'll get to that in a second. But you are creating the line art and then you are applying the dye, and it is essentially just creating one whole artwork that you would expect, like just going into a digital program like Photoshop, creating the line art, then actually filling in the color. The color itself is it's a dye and a paint almost at the same time. There's specific paints that you're supposed to be using for silk, and they have different treatments. The kind that I use is Dynaflow, which is an acrylic based, like super liquidy paint. And you're applying this with the what's it called? It's not a brush, right? I use the foam brushes. So they're not like paint brushes in their own standard. They're like the blocky ones with a foam piece on the end. I apply it with that. You can use paint brushes. You can use like almost any tool that you really want to. I've seen people use like the actual like ketchup bottles almost to apply the dye. They probably have a better name for that, but if you can imagine that you put the dye inside the type of bottle and then you squirt it onto the area. And essentially the resist, the black parts here, keep all the ink in one spot, right? And then you just, like you said, fill in the colors afterwards. And if you do the resist correctly, it keeps it all where it's supposed to be. The resist has a fine control on how thick the lines need to be before it starts leaking everywhere. If you put the dye on incorrectly, it will start leaking into the areas you don't want it to go. I've had so many spills, and I am just thankful that that banner and the one that is its twin work the way they did. And like you can also since it's all the same type of paint as well, that it will actually blend and contrast the way that you'd expect paint to do it. It's a little bit trickier, but it functions the same. Where if you've seen the other slide, it had the contrast of a white green to a darker green to kind of give you that gradient on the leaves themselves. And like, I'm very happy with the look that those are for.
No, for sure. I'm a sucker for banners anyway. My fighting company always has half a dozen or so banners around our camp. And then that's one of the things I love about the SCA are the giant banners that are just fluttering in the wind all the time. And so when I came to your page, that was the first thing I noticed were the giant silk banners there. And these things are pretty cool too. The little stands. Those are neat. Do they fold, I'm assuming?
They don't fold, unfortunately. Now that you say it, though, I can see exactly how they could fold, and I should probably do that.
Yeah, I'm just
it's a really good idea.
For portability, it would be.
I'll have to do that. I'll just have to remove the screws on the middle part, and then I can actually transport them without taking up half my car space.
Well, if you made one a little bit longer than the other, and then they could fold up.
I like that.
It could be cool. I like this better than those. What do they call them? The portable holes, like the steel or the like. Those.
I have one of those. Too. Yeah, I have one of those. They're convenient because they're super small, but Yeah. If for anyone that does recognize it as well, those banners were actually created for the Laurelling of Linden, who cool. I know did this exact thing a few weeks or a month back.
That's awesome. So for those who didn't see that episode, Laurel is our equivalent. Well, our equivalent to Laurel is Serpent Knight. And so Linden is a knight in our game of Amtgard and the equivalent of it in the SCA. And they have different terms for each of their paths of knighthood. The ANS one is called Laurel. And so that's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's her heraldry. That's her registered heraldry for her persona in the SCA.
Cool. I like it. Is this another banner?
Yep. This was actually created specifically for a tournament that I ran at the Salt Wars in 2019, I believe. And it was a 3-man tournament. It was basically militia rules, no ranged weapons. I forget if I had crushing scab weapons enabled, but it was 3 people from each company that wanted to represent themselves. If companies had more people than what was going on, then they could have like different divisions within their companies to fight against each other and such. But the company that came in first place was, I think they're called the Black Lions, if I remember correctly. They are primarily stationed out of Las Vegas, and they are also primarily Belgarth. But Taco, Ronick, and Red Bands were the ones that competed in the tournament and took first place overall. And the middle is their company heraldry.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then some of the leather work there. Now this one, I'm more familiar with the process of leatherworking than I am some of the other stuff. But what, for those who maybe aren't, what goes into making something like this?
So for pieces like this is first off, I would suggest figuring out your template before you try to cut any leather, like figure out what will work for it. But tooling leather itself is just kind of practice, figuring out the feel of your leather, figuring out the feel of your tools, how they stamp. If you look at a couple of corners, you'll see that I had a couple of scratches that weren't intended, and you're going to have mistakes in all of your leather pieces because like it is skin from a cow. And once you put something onto that piece, it's probably not going to come off. It's not going to come off without really good like disguising. But just finding a design that you want to work with. This was specifically for a friend of mine in my local chapter. His name's Eirik, and he is more so Scandinavian or Viking themed for his Amtgard character. So I just wanted to make a pouch for him. Since I told him I was going to make him a few other things and I just haven't gotten to it yet, I threw this together so that way he could have something to hold his wallet, keys, and phone. So that way it wasn't just like in his pocket or in his hand. Adds a little bit more immersion where you're not like you have all your mundane things hidden away. And accessories are also great.
Which is a great thing too. If you're someone who's new and you're watching this, one of the first things I would recommend that you get is a cloak. But then B, the second thing is a pouch, because the pouch is like you can throw your, like you said, your car keys, your money, whatever, and it's all in one place. It looks cool, and it's neat when you have all that stuff on your belt. It makes it look a little bit, I don't know, more in character.
Yeah. And if you're like having trouble just like finding like a tunic, go to Savers or a DI, buy a white dress shirt, cut off the sleeves, take out the buttons, and then just take a wire and go all the way up it, and voila, you have a really nice tunic for like $1.
There you go. What are we looking at here?
So this is a fencing cape.
Oh, cool.
Or a rapier cloak for the SCA. This was specifically designed for my company heraldry in Amtgard. So it was meant to go with the outfit that I'm wearing and the outfit that you can actually see that it's currently sitting on. And I just wanted to have something to kind of represent my Blackthorn company while also dressed up in my Persona blues colored outfit.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But then it looks like machine embroidery. That's a no, man. Can't do machine embroidery at the SCA.
Yeah. You see it all the time, though. They say that they don't like it, but then you see a lot of their products having machine embroidery. So they can't complain too much.
That's one of those things where it is the vocal minority of guard police who care, but then 90% of the game are like, dude, that looks awesome.
Yeah. And that is actually applique.
Okay.
I mean, embroidery, applique, same thing, whatever. But this piece actually challenged me greatly because I had polyester satin marrying velvet. And that was a nightmare to actually machine sew, to the point where I kind of gave up and I hand sewed the entire bottom edge. So if you ever decide to put polyester satin against velvet, don't do it.
I have had something similar when working with silk and linen. Anytime you're bringing two just very different fabrics together, it's not fun to send through a machine.
Definitely. If you can have the entire piece one type of fabric, do it.
Or if you're just trying to do like a trim, like around the sleeve, it's not too bad if you're trying to do a different fabric. Like I've seen some really cool like wool and then just lined with silk. But when you're talking about like what you have here, we have major different fabrics over large portions. Yeah.
It doesn't work the way that you want it to. And it'll cause you immense anger if you are one to get angry.
Is there anything else in particular that you're just super proud of that you want to show off before we move on to our next topic?
Let me see. If you go to a little bit down, you'll see me like the third row from the bottom, third to the right, that one. That is the outfit that I was wearing in Refuge that scared the player character to death. That is definitely one of those items. Let me see.
That's really cool. I have always enjoyed the hodgepodge orc aesthetic, and I have found that it is one of the easier ones to get new players into, because it's like, it doesn't matter if you have 4 different types of armor. This cool, throw it all together and then throw an orc mask on and you're good. You know, like I think that's a cool look that is easily accessible for a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. I have one. If you go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5th row from top, go down a little bit. If you see the mountain and the giraffe, go for the middle one right there. Go one over. Actually, we can talk about that one for a second.
That is really cool.
This one is probably my first biggest scroll piece that I worked on. And I was actually, I think I asked to make this scroll because I really enjoyed the individual that got knighted for this, and I just wanted to make it for them. And his personal heraldic animal is a Pegasus giraffe, or it might have just been a giraffe on its own. I just really liked the idea, and I just kind of threw the whole thing together. And you can kind of see elements that you would expect like a SCA scroll to have. So this is where I was just starting my journey to get into SCA. And I'm really happy with the way it came out, and especially for how big it was. It turned out a lot better than I hoped. Yeah,
that's beautiful. That's awesome. So
if you go one right,
other direction, this one.
Yeah, that one right there. So you'll I wish I had a better picture of it, but for the silk banners, I actually challenged myself to make a banner for every single park in the kingdom.
Cool.
And that is something if I had a picture of the whole view of it, I'd show you. There might actually be one on the kingdom page. But it really adds to the environment. Banners are my thing since I learned about actually making banners, because they just add so much to the environment that it's just great.
They really do. It's one of those things that you can never have too many. Because if you have 4 banners and you throw them around your tent, like what you're doing here, or you throw them at keep or at your feast, I have a portable flagpole that goes underneath my pop-up wheel, and it goes up. It's like 15 feet tall and can hold 2 banners. So I have my company banner and my personal heraldry banner, and I throw that up wherever I go. And banners they add so much to the environment that can be used in so many different places. It's not like your garb where like, oh, I don't want to wear my super fancy Elizabethan garb to field. Dude, I want to take my banner everywhere with me. Like I want to throw it on the field. I personally want one of those, like the samurai back flags. I think those would be sick. They look cool at court. They look cool anywhere you take it. They look awesome.
There it is. I found it. That's great, dog. That's great. That's also great.
If you want to send it to me in Messenger, I'll pull it up.
Yep.
Oh, that's cool.
Yep. So that's
a massive one right there in the middle.
That massive one. Here, I'll send that one to you as well. There we go. Okay. Sent that one as well. So the original idea was I wanted every park to be represented in our kingdom. And then I just kind of went crazy and made a banner for absolutely everybody. And then I had the opportunity to actually hang all the banners up at one of the mid-rain events. And this was also an event where I presented Canthor his Master Rose, I think it was. Pretty sure it was his Rose. Yeah, it was his Rose.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What estimate for me off the top of your head? How many hours did you have in all those banners?
Are we including dry time?
Sure. No, probably not dry time. Actual work hours.
Well, I'm pretty sure there's 13 banners. So I would say about 4 hours of work for each banner. That's to include like washing the silk, hanging the silk on the frame, stenciling out the heraldry, and then putting the color on the heraldry. Probably 4 hours total work without dry time for each banner.
That's awesome. I always love asking artisans like what their favorite piece is and then how long it took, because sometimes people look at just the end result at the ANS tournaments and they're like, oh, that's cool. And they don't understand how much time goes into some of the cool stuff that we take advantage of.
Yeah. Art takes a lot of time.
It does.
And in the art that you see that does take a lot of time, you're also not seeing the time that it took them to get to the level that you're seeing at them now. Mm-hmm. So like art in general is just a lot of time. Not much more you can say about that.
For sure. How many banners did you practice on before you got one where you were like, yeah, cool, I want to show this to somebody and hang this up in someone's camp? Like how many practice pieces did you have?
My practice piece was probably the one that you pulled up that was on the wooden frame.
Okay.
Because I wasn't really sure what was going on yet. I wasn't really sure what I was doing. And beyond that, there was probably a couple that I worked on that was that another guy was working on for his kingdom, and he let me do a few lines of it.
Cool.
There was definitely a few pieces where I had a couple scripts that I had to try to cover up, but like I would consider all my pieces practice pieces almost.
For sure.
Where I always learn something from every piece that I do, and I always make at least one mistake on every piece I do, to the point where it's not really a mistake, it's a learning experience. So yes. Yeah,
100%. I think the point that you made of you don't see all of the work that goes into learning the skills is something that new, like I don't want to say new, but up and coming people in arts and science and someone who's trying to push for those higher end awards, you need to understand that for every piece that makes it to the Dragon Master table, there are 4 more pieces at home that either didn't make it there or aren't finished yet, or there's a lot that goes into it.
I have so many pieces that I have started and I have just like abandoned almost. Like I also have too many items that I'm working on at the moment as well, but it's like it's just like once you get going, it's nonstop. You are going to learn how to do things. You're going to lose interest in different things. That is okay. Keep going. Learn from the stuff that you do.
Yep. I can't tell you how. So just like I'm looking around my room. I have stuff up there to make wood rings out of countertop vinyl. That's up there. I've got some lamb that I laced. That's up there that I never finished. I've got some leather over here that I tried my hand at a leather belt that I'm not very good at. I've got that over here. Like just looking around, most of your quote high-end crafters have experimented in so many different things outside of the main thing that they are known for that they would love to talk to you about. Like just if you have a question of this is, anybody, if you see something that someone is wearing or someone made or like ask about it. I have never found an artisan who doesn't want to talk about the stuff that they love. Like ask them and they'll tell you. Yeah. So I want to transition on your wiki. It shows Duke. So that makes me, I don't know how your kingdom works, but that makes me think some level of kingdom level office. Is that right?
Yes. So since starting my joining of Amtgard itself, I have been a nonstop just go. I've said that a couple times. Just do it. Don't think about it. It's essentially what I've done. It's like Amtgard in itself and every other community that I've joined, they've just become a passion of just what I like to do. It's like LARPing is my main hobby. I don't do too much anymore beyond that. I used to play video games all the time. Now I don't. But like starting my first term in office was prime minister at my local chapter, and that started in June 2017, and from there it just kind of escalated to the point where I was doing prime minister, and then I did another prime minister term, and then I did a monarch term for my local chapter, and then I was like, well, our corpora allows me to also hold a kingdom office as long as it's not like one of the big ones. If I do champion at the kingdom level, I can still hold local office. So let's do both at the same time. And I ended up doing that with Desert Winds, and I just kept rolling forward to where I was doing so like I've been in office since I joined, essentially. I'm in office now. The only time that I wasn't in office was when I was not in the country, effectively.
There you go. So what advice would you have for somebody who is running for a local level shire or barony level office for the first time? What if you can sit them down for a couple of minutes and say, here's what you need to know before you jump into that, what would you tell them?
Don't be afraid to ask questions. We all make mistakes. It's okay if you make a mistake. Everybody will move on for the most part. And like, as long as you show the passion and the interest in the game, you take those few hours a few hours every week to like put into the game, you are going to do good. If you're not sure about something, find somebody who's a Master Crown or a Crown Knight and ask them like, hey, I'm having issues with this specific part of my office. What should I do to improve? But for like actually going into office, I would say just make sure that you're committed to the game. Maybe not like long term, but committed to those 6 months that you were signing up for. For sure. If you can't do that time because real world stuff is preventing you from actually fully indulging in that, focus on your real life stuff first, because real life is more important than the game, because it is just a game. We're all volunteers in our own sense. The Kingdom Monarch is a volunteer. They did sign up for it, but that is not their main job. None of us are really getting paid to do the jobs that we are doing in any of the nonprofit organizations that we're doing. We're just doing it because we really enjoy it. So just keep that in mind when you're doing it. And if you can't commit, then that's fine. Yep. And if you need to step down because something came up, that is absolutely fine. You need to focus on yourself before you focus on the game, essentially. Once you're in a good place and you're able to focus on the game, then hold the kingdom office. Make sure you give a few hours a week at minimum to the game. Plan ahead, do as much planning as you can. If you're going for like a monarch position in a local or a kingdom office, I would figure out what type of reign you're going for, figure out the theme that you're doing, make a plan of what you kind of want to be expecting for that, and then you would get with your regents and your champion for that reign to further and delve in that. Another thing is communicate. Always talk to the people that you are serving and working with. When you are the monarch or you are the regent, you are not, in my opinion, the top person. You are essentially serving a potential 10, 20 people at the local, or you're serving the 500 or more, or however big your kingdom is. You are serving them to help them have a really good time. And you can enjoy that at the same time. But I would definitely say that like you are serving the kingdom rather than the kingdom is serving you, because you are doing that.
For sure. Is now for someone who's about to enter into their first kingdom level office. Yeah, all of that sounds like it transfers to the kingdom level. Is there anything specific to someone running for a kingdom level office that you would advise?
I mean, you could probably tell them like about the expectations that you're going to have. This is specifically with the circle of monarchs in a monarch position. When you are watching a kingdom monarch do their job, you are not seeing the 1,000 messages that are popping up in their Facebook feed or even their email account. You're not able to account for all that information that's going to be overloading you. You are also going to be put into tough decisions. So make sure that you're okay with making decisions in its own regard as well, because there are some cases where you may end up having to deal with banning somebody permanently, potentially, and you have to be kind of prepared for that to happen. It's unfortunate, but there are some cases where you have to do it. And I would say the best skill that you could potentially have in a kingdom office, especially as a monarch position, is to have the ability to adapt to what is going on. Because when I took the monarch position halfway, like just like a month after I got the position, I had to shut down the whole kingdom because that's when COVID started. It was a tough decision. Everybody, there was a handful of people that were very frustrated. There was another handful that was very, they helped me along with it. Like they helped with the decision that I made, and just be flexible. That'd probably be the biggest thing that I would tell people to be, is just be able to be flexible.
You gotta be able to roll with the punches at that level, because it's a 6-month term. It's a long term. Like you're like, oh, 6 months, I can do that. But man, when you have an issue every other day that you have to deal with, or every week, it's an investment.
Yep. Yep.
And if you're not willing to do that investment, that's fine. No, you're not expected to. But if you're throwing your name into that hat, make sure you're willing and ready to do the work that's needed.
Yep. Always ask questions. Yep. It's probably the thing that I would always say is like, always be humble enough to ask the person next to you for help, and always be humble enough to ask the person a question if you need an answer, because there's nothing really worse than somebody who's like, I'm just going to shut myself in because I'm going to try to figure this out myself, when it's already been solved 100 times, when you can just ask.
Yeah. And I would add a little bit to that. Make sure you ask a variety of people, especially at the high, like, I don't know how old your kingdom is, but in the Rising Winds, when I was serving, there were 20 years of history of people who had done that job before I had done it when I got there. And so it is important to ask questions, but it's also important to ask questions of people you disagree with or that you know are not going to have the same solution that you do. And you don't have to follow it by any means. But getting perspectives that are very different than your own is part of the leadership process. And if you're only going to ask, your 5 or 6 core group of friends and you already know what they're going to say before you ask them, that's doesn't, in my opinion, that doesn't really count as seeking advice. Like you got to go outside of your immediate circle. And that could mean outside your belt line. That could mean outside of your fighting company, whatever it happens to be. And not saying don't ask those people, but make sure you're getting multiple opinions if you have a big decision like that, with the caveat of only talk about stuff with them that you're allowed to talk about. How about that? Don't go to some random person who was king 10 years ago and say, hey, I've got this ban. Here's all the info. Don't do that.
Yeah. Don't do that.
So I want to transition a little bit to earlier. You talked about your belt line. I saw you are a part of one of the longest, most prestigious belt lines. But it took me a little bit because I was like, where is he? Oh, he's a page. So at least that's what the wiki said. I could be mistaken.
Still a page.
Cool. So brag on your belt line a little bit. How does one get to masterhood and is, quote, still a page? Like, there's sometimes this massive negative view on pages, man-at-arms, and even squires to an extent that I just absolutely hate the stigma there. So how does one get to masterhood and still be just a page?
So I actually got my belt from Mr. Pickles out of coincidence almost. I seen him post something on the ANS Anonymous page, and I just started asking him 1,000 questions, literally 1,000 questions, to the point where I like, hey, do you want a belt? That's effectively how that kind of went, where I have just like from the beginning of all my leatherworking to where I am now, I've always had a question for him about what I should do or what I should focus on, how I should do it, everything like that. And he eventually offered me a belt, and he was like, hey, would you like a page belt? And I'm like, sure, why not? I don't know what that really means, because I don't really know anything about the Amtgard beltings or the belt lines or anything like that. He was like, oh, by the way, you're also part of one of the oldest belt lines in Amtgard. I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah. That's the Michael Hammer of God line for those who aren't looking at the wiki.
The funny thing about that, though, is that the only 2 people I've had the most interaction out of the belt line is Mr. Pickles and Michael. Like, I've met Michael at a couple Salt Wars events, and I've met him at Keep. I've had conversations with him. I've talked to him. I haven't really talked to many others that are in the belt line. I have talked to Sir Herald a few times, specifically because he is Mr. Pickles' belter. So I've talked to him a few times, but I haven't really had much interaction with many other people that's in the belt line.
Which is funny because you probably have, just unknowingly, because the belt is like 400 people.
Yeah. Honestly, if you go to my Wiki page, you'll see the entire belt line, and you'll see how many squires Michael himself has, and then you'll see how many of those squires end up turning into knights, and then how many squires and knights those individuals have as well.
I think one of his branches is like 7 knights deep or 6 knights deep or something at this point.
Yeah, you have Michael, then you have Sir Morgan Ironwolf, then Sir Stoner, then Sir Jito, Sir Shady, and then Sir Shady has Sir Wendella and Sir Greasy underneath them, and then it's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
That is one of the things. Again, I'm a history buff, a history nerd, a legacy nerd, legacy buff. That's one of the things I'm kind of excited for, is to see how I get super, super excited of going through people's belt lines on the wiki. And I cannot wait until the day when mine is like 4 generations deep.
Yeah.
It's going to be cool. Being in Michael's position where he has, 5 great grand belts who are meeting him for the first time. And like, it's a cool, that's cool. Like that's neat. And the fact that you have done something beneficial enough to the game to make that big of a lasting impact. That's my goal.
I actually just sent you an image of my belt line on the belt that I've made. I believe this actually made my most recent owl. And
that's cool.
Yeah, so I do some miniature painting, so I can do some small detail work. But you'll see it kind of go through the entire belt line. Michael on the far right and the very bottom, going up all the way to Mr. Pickles, which is the second top, and then to my heraldry at the very top. So that's awesome. That was like one of the things that I really enjoyed making, just because of the kind of like the feel that it has and the impact that it has, showing like, look at my belt line. This is it.
I think that's really cool. There are some people who despise belt lines in our game, and I get it. I understand they're not for everybody, or people have had bad experiences, but I had a fantastic, underbelt hood, whatever you want to call it. I was a page and then a man at arms to two different knights. And then my third knight was the one who I quote graduated with. And I have learned so much through the belt line mentorship process that I highly value it. And I know that there are a lot of people who don't. And I think it's cool that in our game, if you like the mentorship and the ideals behind knighthood, you can chase it. And if you don't, you don't have to.
Exactly.
Like it's a cool system. I'm a sucker for it.
I also made it long enough to where if I pass on the belt to somebody else, whenever I get my knighthood, that I can add their heraldry on top of it, and then it can keep going until the point it just can't be worn anymore, because I'm pretty sure it's getting to that point.
That's so cool. I like that a lot. I have thought about doing something similar with trying to make leather patches like that and sew them onto woven belt. And but I do not have the artistic. I'm a master dragon who can't draw and can't paint, and so it gets kind of difficult to do some of that stuff. But
that's fair.
One day. So as we kind of close up here, we've been talking about the past a whole lot. We've been talking about, your history and how you got your masterhoods and whatnot. What are you excited for in the next 6 months to a year? Like what is exciting you in Amtgard right now?
Well, I'm excited for events to happen again. I'm excited to see people in person. This coming Saturday will actually be probably our biggest return park days that we'll be having. And then it'll probably only grow from there. But events specifically, I was actually looking really forward to going to Keep in September because it's actually going to be an in-person event. I actually already bought the plane ticket, but now there's a chance that I might not be able to go, which I'm super bummed about. But we'll see. I'll see what kind of priority I have to rely on that.
The Keep site looks awesome this year too. That I grew up probably 20 minutes from where this Keep site is, and so I'm a little biased. But the fairgrounds looks pretty cool. We'll see how they do the battle games. I think that's the biggest thing they have to overcome, is they don't have woods or anything like that. But the non-battle game facilities look sick. Yeah.
I'm really hoping to go because it'll be my first big Amtgard event to come back to. But for the next 6 months, I'm just going to go with the flow. I have a ton of events outside of Amtgard that I'm excited for. In 2 weeks, in a week and a half, I'll be going to a 3-day event. The week after that, I'll have another 3-day event. And then in September, I'll have another event, and then Keep potentially. I'm hoping that I get to go to that one as well, because it just, in-person events are probably the best experience that you'll ever have in any LARP, especially the ones where you are camping with your friends and eventually your family, because you get to know everybody well enough that you just become family with everybody that you're meeting.
Yep. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this or not, but this is just kind of how I feel. So I always say it. The events for me are my favorite part of Amtgard, and I put up with park because it means getting more people to events. I generally am not a huge fan of the like small battle games, 5-10 person battle games. They're okay, but they're not my favorite. But you need those individual park days to grow, because then you get more people funneling into your events that way. Yeah. And so I am the same way as you. I adore events, the camping with your friends, fighting with your friends, seeing people that you don't get to see all that often. And especially at like Keep, where you have people coming in from all over the country that you probably don't see at any other event other than Keep is awesome.
Yeah, I am definitely excited to go to Keep if I'm able to go, because I'll be able to see my Michigan friends again. Everybody from Ashen Hills will be there, and I'll be able to camp with them and talk to them and have fun, fight with them. Be great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So is there anything that you wanted to chat about, anything that's weighed on your heart that I didn't ask question-wise that you, and if you don't have anything, that's fine too, but is there anything that you wanted to chat about while we're here that I may have overlooked?
I think just the points of my view on Knight, Squire, Man-at-Arms, or whatever title you would like to prefer, and Page, like... The only hierarchy that I really see is Knight, Squire, and then the belt underneath it. Page and the Man-at-Arms, or whatever you prefer. Those two, in my opinion, mean about the same thing in terms of hierarchy. One, I think, would be more of a fighting one. The at-arms belt would be more fighting aspect, and then the Page might be more ANS. But like, there's no difference to me. I don't really mind that I am a Page right now. And if Mr. Pickles did become a Knight, he probably would have made me a Squire by now. But I'm not really going to harp on that or minds, because I'm part of his belt line. He's helped me with so much that it's just good that I'm there.
For sure. So theoretically, if you get knighted before him, would you offer him a Squire belt? And he could be the dual Squire, right? He could be yours and whoever his current knight is.
I don't think I'd do that. It might be confusing for some people, since yellow is the knighthead color for crown, but I think I would wear a yellow sash underneath the white belt. And I will keep that there until he becomes a knight. And at that point, I'm just pressuring him to actually put the effort to become a knight.
There you go. I love it. I know for most, I don't think most kingdoms have a corpora difference between the at-arms and the page belts. I think it kind of is up to the individual knights. And I know some knights who don't care at all what they're under, their squires do. And then some, like for me, I'm a more of a systematic person, I guess. So like I have, I really benefited as coming up as having a structure for me to work towards. And so I've kind of implemented something where Page is, if someone is a first to third order in something, that's a Page belt. And then 4, I think I have it set up 4 to 6 is the at-arms, and then 7 and above is Squire. And so, and I will take people who are interested in learning, just not even necessarily from my particular craft. I have belt leans that aren't going to be Serpent Knights ever. I think that's okay. But if it gives that structure to be able to have something to work towards, but I have zero issue with the knights who are like, no, I don't want any underbelts. Like I just want my squires. And I think both are good as long as it works for the people that are involved in that belt line and that relationship.
Out of curiosity, how many people do you have belted under you?
So I have 2 squires, Haliax, who is a leather worker. He is, if I recall, at 8 owls, and I think he has 8 roses at this point. And then I have Madness, who is my squire also, who is a 6 or 7 on warrior. That's what he's trying to go for. And then I have 2 man-at-arms who are kind of, I don't want to call them my buddy belts. Like these 2 aren't ever going to be knights if I had to guess. But they're like best friends, and they're award-wise fit in that man-at-arms. But I've got Hearth, and then I have Ajax, and then I have 1 Page right now, a guy named Gabriel, who's a new player at my park. So that's nice. 2 squires, 2 man-at-arms, and a Page is where I'm at.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, do you have any opinion on how many beltlings is the quote correct amount? Because I know some knights are like, oh yeah, I want 12 squires, and then there's like only one.
Yeah, that's actually what I was about to comment on, because I know some people are of the opinion that like you only get one squire per belt that you have, which I disagree with. I feel like if the person fits underneath your belted family or your belt line, whichever term you'd prefer, go at it. Have as many people as you want underneath you.
Yep. Who am I to not extend my expertise or my mentorship or my friendship even simply because I already have enough friends underneath my belt? Like that, if I can benefit somebody else and they want to be a part of my belt line, and we mesh, we get along. And one of the things for me, and I know some knights aren't this way, but a big factor for me is, especially for my squires, I don't mind on my underbelts, but especially for my squire, I want there to be a desire for masterhood. And so there's that. But then another thing is, I want these people to be able to come over to my home and eat dinner with my family. If they don't fit those two criteria, if I don't want them around my wife and children, I don't want them in my belt line. And so there is this element of friendship there and camaraderie, and we travel to events together, and like my squires are really close with me. But who am I to say that if I have another friend who is close enough, or even not a friend necessarily, even if it's just someone like what you were saying about someone you've met online. I have people in our Weavers Facebook group that I would offer belts to if they were interested. And these are people I've never really met, but they have the desire for masterhood, and their character is one that I would be comfortable with them being around my family. I'm all good with belts for that. So those are kind of my two criteria. Unsolicited advice. How about that?
I agree. I like it.
Cool. So I appreciate you, Lukas. Thank you very much for being on. Sorry, Lukas the Fourth. I like that. I'm going to keep saying that because I think we should have more fourths in numbers down the line. I think that's cool. So appreciate you for being on. Listeners, if you have made it this far with us, thank you very much. We would have really appreciated if you hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. It does a whole lot for the algorithm and gets this up and seen by more people. But until next time, this was The Archive. We'll see you later.
Thank you much.